Cast your eyes towards the beginning of the video game era. Consoles were an expensive luxury, with the price of some of them, like the Atari 2600 and Neo Geo, reaching $1,000 when adjusted for inflation. Video games were primitive, offering little value from the modern standpoint outside of a couple of tricks each of them could do. Still, home entertainment was revolutionized with the arrival of digital media that you could control. 1984 saw the release of the first successful fighter-like in Karateka for Apple II. It was such a hit that it was later ported to the Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, MS-DOS, and later to NES and Game Boy. The price of the game was between $30 and $60 depending on the system, and it sold several hundred thousands of copies. There were simpler times. No one was thinking about battle passes, paid cosmetics, timed exclusivity, and rotating in-game shops yet. Gaming and fighting games weren't greedy yet. But how did we arrive at our current state? What is actually our current state? And is there anything that can be done about it? Let's dive into it. Video games aren't exactly new as an entertainment medium. They were preceded by virtually any other popular one. They used to follow the same trends as the movies. At least they tried to. We had medium-defying masterpieces, the bottom-of-the-barrel stuff, the trashy B-tier schlock, the cash-grab tie-ins and adaptations, and merch, ungodly amounts of merch. Video games, like movies, used to come pre-packaged in their dedicated stores. You either bought one, rented one, or borrowed from a friend. There were no digital versions yet. People barely knew what the internet was. It doesn't mean that the companies didn't want to make money, however. How many of you were around when people used to buy N64 expansion packs? Have you seen Pocket Station? And I bet you haven't heard of Sega Activator from Mega Drive, which was created with the goal of letting you play fighting games by doing the moves in real life. Nintendo figured out how to make lots of money pretty early. Their Pokemon games came in 2 editions with mutually exclusive creatures, and while this indeed encouraged kids to trade their monsters, it also encouraged people to buy 2 copies of the same game. They also understood that merch moves mountains and rakes in unfathomable amounts of money. Just take a look at the list of the highest earning media franchises. But it wasn't just 2 different versions of a single game that could be sold to hungry gamers. Before the internet became widespread, we used to have things called expansion packs that were sold separately from the original game and were available in the very same brick and mortar stores kids used to beg their mothers to go to. They were different in scope, price, and implementation, but they all had something in common. They needed to be substantial to sell at all. Baldur's Gate 2: Shadows of Amn, the predecessor of 2023's Game of the Year, had an expansion called Throne of Baal, which sold nearly 100,000 copies within a week of its release. In the 2000s, the internet ceased to be this unseen beast and became much more readily available to everyone across the world. Companies that sell video games and make consoles have slowly started to realize that there's profit to be made by selling ones and zeros. You probably know what we're leading up to, but the Horse Armor DLC wasn't the first one to be available online. Total Annihilation had a monthly free unit giveaway as early as 1997, and even the stuff like Halo 2 multiplayer map pack and graffiti artworks for Jet Set Radio and Dreamcast predated. Nevertheless, it was indeed the infamous Horse Armor DLC for the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion that changed video game monetization forever. It obviously was received with great backlash, especially considering that the modding scene for Bethesda's games were already alive and well, and you could get much more substantial and frankly better looking mods for free. But while people ridiculed and laughed at it, people that make financial decisions took notice. Slowly and surely, we started seeing more and more content from the games being sold online for additional money. It was just DLCs at first, but soon the games and network would evolve so much that people were able to buy things without even leaving the game. When Dota was created in 2003 as a mod to Warcraft 3, it obviously had all the characters playable by default. Dota 2, its sequel, continued this trend. You can always play the hero you want to play, but before Dota 2 was even a thing, another MOBA was normalizing that buying characters is a normal practice. League of Legends, the crown jewel of Riot's game repertoire, came with limited free character options, with the player having to buy the rest with either in-game currency, which took a long time, or by simply paying real money to get them. But hey, the game was free, and the developers needed something to eat, right? The same explanation was extended to the paid cosmetics. And while League of Legends wasn't the first game to do this, it was immensely popular and still is today around the globe. This was the next step, a test of whether or not the gamers would accept paying for content in-game, and we did. Slowly and surely, this practice, these microtransactions, seeped into other multiplayer games, free games, and even single-player story-driven ones. Horse armor in Oblivion, and then a fiery unicorn instead of a horse in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The explanations, seem to be along the lines of, we're selling this because we need money. It ceased to be comme il faut to speak about the monetary gains. It was all about, quote-unquote, allowing the players who wanted to stand out, who sought more flamboyancy and style, an opportunity to do so. The other times, it was about the sense of pride and accomplishment, but we all know how that particular one went. But even this wasn't the bottom of the iceberg. Remember how games had unlockables that rewarded exploration, mastery, and the ability to think outside the box? What if you had to buy the opportunity to earn rewards? That is what the Battle Pass is. On the one hand, you pay for digital content like in the cases we already mentioned, but on the other hand, you don't even get it right away. You need to perform some additional steps to get it, usually win games or at least spend enough time in them. There were many who weaponized this concept to make money, but we'll throw our stone at Fortnite, as that's the one everyone tries to copy. But the one we hate the most is the dreaded rotating shop. It's just a system that preys on those with weak will or impulse control. Hey, this awesome character skin is available for 1,000 credits today. It's not on any kind of discount, but you only have 4 more hours to buy it, and who knows when it will become available again. Go ahead and indulge. Oh, and don't mind that you can only buy 800 or 1,200 credits with real money, not exactly 1,000. It's hard not to get mad when you see the same patterns in every game with a system like that. Those who want to take your money from you have done this to a science. Nothing is ever coincidental. Speaking of monetization, we recently remade our Patreon, introducing new tiers and rewards, and it would help us immensely if you considered subscribing. We promise you our pricing is much more transparent than those we just talked about. Fighting games follow the same trends all video games do, but with several years of delay. And they finally reached the point where they started to rip you off. Let's take a look at the big three. In the 2000s, ailing Midway flung a lot of stuff at the wall to see what would stick. They released a spin-off of the mainline Mortal Kombat series, Deadly Alliance. It was followed by Deception, the first MK to have online functionality. Then was Armageddon, which had a roster so large it would make the modern developers wince. Midway's last entry was MK vs. DC Universe. It was well received, but didn't save the company. After Midway went up in flames and NetherRealm Studios arose from its ashes, the world was already a different place. There were rumors that MK vs. DC Universe was supposed to have a DLC, which was cancelled, but the fact of the matter is, NRS's Mortal Kombat 2011 was the first one to receive a DLC. Freddy Krueger, Kenshi, Rain, and Scarlet. And if you were to protest the inclusion of paid characters, remember, lots of games have already done it, it's fine. And looking back, it is. It's a small price to pay for additional characters that we wouldn't have received otherwise in the past. Surely it won't become excessive. Oh. You see, it's not just the existence of DLCs or microtransactions that's the only problem. It's the context and the pricing. Why did Jason Voorhees and Bo Raicho from MKX cost $4.99 each, while the Joker and Melina for MK11 are $5.99 each? Because the number is arbitrary. Okay, listen, the development of any piece of content costs money, be it physical or digital. Sure, the companies have calculated that the development of a single character costs them X, Y, and Z amount in man hours, and money in sculpting, gameplay scripting, promoting, etc. But in the end, none of the designers, programmers, or marketing specialists would go without a salary had they been doing something different. Look, this is crude, but ultimately, the price set on those characters is the price they can get away with. It's the price the players will agree with without too much grumbling. It's the price the monetization specialists, who definitely don't go without a salary, deemed we're conditioned enough to pay. And looking at MK1, boy, do these specialists think they can get away with a lot. The newest entry in this saga does away with the crypt, opting for an undercooked invasions mode, but for the paid store, they went with the FOMO-inducing rotating one. Please buy this shiny katana skin, it's here for only 3 more hours. Mortal Kombat has finally caught up with the modern trends. But what about Street Fighter? Well, Street Fighter was always good at making money. Ever since Street Fighter 2, Capcom has been a leader in doing the best with the technology currently available. Do you remember how many additions Street Fighter 2 had? Champion, Turbo, Super, Super Turbo, Hyper, HD, Remix, and Ultra. But wait, that's Legendary Street Fighter 2, and it was ages ago. Okay, Street Fighter 4 had Super, Arcade, 3D, and Ultra. This doesn't count as money making, And it was always like this, you say? Fine. Street Fighter V was released with a roster of 16 characters and received 5 DLC waves containing 6 characters each. As we've already established, this in and of itself isn't anything egregious, but as always, context matters. Street Fighter V was released in a sorry state, with bad netcode, a lack of single-player content, and it required a lot of trust on the player's part to trust that the devs would fix the game before buying into their monetization practices. When the game was updated to Arcade Edition in 2018, many of the issues seemed to be fixed, but another, more sinister one arose. You see, the game now had ads within it. They were displayed between the matches and on character costumes. You had the ability to turn them off, but that disabled your fight money income. How convenient. This was simply the case of them adding free-to-play game practices to your full-price product. Granted, they were mostly showing you the content for the Capcom Pro Tour or available bundles you could give them more money for, and not some third-party adverts, but the point still stands. Capcom figured out quite quickly that the CPT draws a lot of eyes, so why not monetize even that? Pro Tour packs became a thing and never ceased to be it. They usually included character outfits promoted as being based on CPT, some alternate colors, stages, Pro Tour-based profile themes and titles, and fight money. The thing with packs like these, obviously, is that you can't simply get the item you want. You need to pay for all of them. If you want M. Bison's outfit for the Capcom Pro Tour 2022 Premier Pass, you need to shell out for the titles, colors, and everything else. You're paying a premium for the superfluous items you don't need. Those of you who paid close attention may have noticed that we didn't mention the most dreaded monetization practice of them all: loot boxes. Yep, Street Fighter V had them too. Thankfully, you didn't have to pay your hard-earned cash for them, only the in-game fight money you grinded for. It was only available for a single mode, but the fight money was hard to come by as it was, so adding a bottomless pit for you to be able to sink it all into was also a calculated move. The more money you need, the longer you will play the game, and who knows, maybe you will purchase something with real money in that time. It obviously wasn't well received, and one might wonder what might have happened if everyone ignored it. Would they make us roll packs to get a 98 stat Chun-Li with real money? Speaking of the bundles, Street Fighter VI recently received the controversial Outfit 3 bundle. Thankfully, if you want to purchase any particular character skin, you can, but mere outfits cost more than the entire characters in the previous game. And if you add up all the prices, it's more than $100. The best part, they're not included in the season pass. It comes with third outfits only for the DLC characters. You did read the fine print, didn't you? Tekken was historically a bit better at this than the others. Up until Tekken Tag Tournament 2, the only alternate edition was Tekken 5's Dark Resurrection. It was an update aimed at PSP and PS3 owners, as the original game came out only on PS2. Tekken 6 and Tag 2 also didn't have any downloadable content, with most of the customization options being traditionally available in-game, but they did receive free updates in the form of Bloodline Rebellion and Unlimited, respectively. However, the Wii U edition of Tag 2 did raise some eyebrows for including some content that was exclusive to the Nintendo console only. Upon Tekken 7's release, it was quickly announced that the game would receive several waves of character DLCs, and that this would enable the developers to support the game for the years to come. Fair enough. What wasn't fair, though, is that Bandai Namco tried to monetize something as core as frame data display. It's a mere $199, but the fact that you needed to shell out for it was a slap in the face for the majority of the players. To this very day, it's by far the lowest rated piece of downloadable content for Tekken 7. While Tekken 7 did sell some customization options for real money, they were mostly additional costumes that fit all the characters at once and were packaged with Tekken Bolt. However, the fact that you had to purchase a For Fun game mode was egregious on its own. Where we see some worrying signs is the promotional material for Tekken 8. The advert for the Ultimate Edition says you will receive some additional golden costumes for the entire cast and some t-shirts and avatars for the arcade quest. It would be a real shame if the mode they've been hyping up so much is riddled with lots of paid content that goes against the free customization spirit of Tekken. But there was one more game, Horse Armor of the FGC, if you may. It's Street Fighter X Tekken. This entire crossover had controversies, discussions, and unfulfilled potential to fill the runtime of 3 videos by itself. The game was received well and got praise for translating Tekken characters into a 2D world, as well as its more technical aspects, but its monetization was a complete disaster. First, it was discovered that retail disc the game shipped on contained 12 unreleased DLC characters to be sold separately. Usually, DLCs contain content that was produced after the game's release, so having cut content just being there on the disc to make some additional money didn't sit well with the players and critics alike. Capcom made some weak arguments, which were also not well received. In the end, the outrage was so massive that Capcom removed the same kind of on-disc DLC from Dragon's Dogma. The impact was felt across the industry as a whole as companies grew wiser to this, and frankly, more and more physical releases don't even have disc in them anymore, just digital download codes, which is another can of worms altogether. But that wasn't all for Street Fighter X Tekken either. One of the mechanics of the game is the gem system. You could equip these gems to alter your builds and shore up your character's weaknesses or enhance their defense. You could buy these for real money. Yeah, an openly pay-to-win system crept into fighting games. You could imagine how that went with everyone. It was openly ridiculed by pretty much everyone, and to this day, whenever the sentiment of Street Fighter X Tekken arises, every discussion's top comment is, the game was good, but yeah, gems. What do we have in total? Overpriced DLCs, restrictive bundles, FOMO-inducing rotating shops, and even ads in your full-priced games. Fighting games reached parity with the rest of the gaming world and were being strung out for money just like everyone else is. Many argue that nowadays video games cost as much as they were in the times when karateka was all the rage, yet the value of money has gone down with inflation, so additional revenue streams are required. Some developers even argue that gamers should be charged per hour of entertainment, but the truth of the matter is that these big budget AAA games are almost always profitable. Back then, karateka was bought by 100,000 people. Today, Mortal Kombat 11 was sold to almost 15 million. Any stories about microtransactions being essential for any game survival are crushed by the harsh reality of the billions raked in by FIFA's Ultimate Team, Fortnite, Genshin Impact, and many others. But is there nothing that can be done? Frankly speaking, considering how gaming trends work and how fighting games aren't an exception to them, we need a major shift in gaming for that to happen. We need more mavericks, like Sven Vincke of Larian, who released a full-fledged, deep, nerdy CRPG to such a critical and commercial success that the rest of the gaming world started quaking in their boots, fearing the seemingly unattainable standards that Baldur's Gate 3 set. We need more people like Josh Strife-Hayes, who dissect the predatory practices employed by many modern games. We need more of the live service cash grabs to fail. This won't happen overnight, but the signs are already there. There wasn't nearly the amount of pushback in the past as there is today. But that the scenario in which people just put their foot down and refuse to spend money on shady microtransactions isn't very realistic. The change should be gradual. It should seep into a collective consciousness and take hold there first. Sadly, this is still a vocal minority, while a silent majority is unaware of the issues at hand. Even worse, some of the games that have these microtransactions planned and laid out in such ways that even 100 or 1,000 biggest paying customers could keep the millions afloat and the game profitable. Thankfully, there are no means to buy power in modern fighting games, monetization from Street Fighter X Tekken not really getting any foothold in this niche, and most of the people watching this video aren't whales themselves. But as long as this exists, everyone, including the fighting game devs, will seek ways to use and abuse such practices. But this doesn't mean you can't play your part. Asking you to just stop paying your money to them would be foolish and idealistic. After all, why should I stop paying when everyone else is doing it? My $5 won't change a thing, is a valid answer. But you could spend wisely. You can always spend in a way that won't diminish your enjoyment. You see an outfit for Cammy and you main her? Go ahead and grab it. But you don't need to go out of your way and also buy outfits for E Honda, Luke, and Guile. You have less than 10 matches on them combined. As we mentioned previously, it would be naive to think that a single person can change the major trend. But at the same time, this is the best any given individual can do to contribute to the shift. Our roles are limited to conscious spending and not falling into the trap of modern monetization. Thanks for watching today's video and listening to me rant on and on about monetization in gaming. It's something I'm very passionate about. Be sure to head over to DashFight.com if you want the latest FGC news, guides, and so much more. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.